And the Oscar goes to Christian Bale, the fighter.
He was once the hero the world adored. But behind the armor of Batman stood a body pushed to the edge of survival, and a soul cracked far deeper than anyone ever saw. There exist unreleased photos capturing Christian Bale as nothing more than a shadow, bones protruding, eyes sunken, sitting motionless in a dark room after hours of self-destruction just to disappear into a character. And at the very same time, his family fell apart, his anger exploded on camera, Scotland Yard opened an investigation, and Hollywood stood silently as a genius slowly burned himself down in pursuit of perfection. What could turn one of the most respected actors of our time into a man living on a razor's edge between brilliance and self-ruin? Christian Charles Philip Bale was born on January 30th, 1974, in Haverfordwest, a small town in Wales where the winters were long, the winds were sharp, and dreams rarely survived past the horizon. His father, David Bale, a restless entrepreneur with endless ambitions but little stability, moved the family constantly, not because they wanted adventure, but because debt, failed ventures, and collapsing plans left them no place to stay for too long. Christian was barely 6 when he realized that home was not a place, but a temporary stop. By the age of 8, he had lived in England, Portugal, and the United States, a nomadic childhood marked by school transfers, unfamiliar streets, and the quiet loneliness of being a boy who never stayed long enough to form friendships. His mother, Jenny, a former circus performer and dancer, was the only consistent force in his childhood, pushing him towards stage and movement as if the spotlight could replace the stability he never had. But what no one saw was how early Christian learned to shapeshift, not for a role, but for survival. In every new town, he had to reinvent himself. New accent, new posture, new version of the same boy trying not to stand out too much. When he was 10, the cracks inside the Bale household began to widen. Financial strain turned into arguments. Arguments turned into long silences. And silences became the soundtrack of a collapsing marriage. Christian absorbed every tension. His father's unpredictability, his mother's exhaustion, the constant uprooting, all of it carved into him a deep, unspoken fear. If he wasn't perfect, everything would fall apart. That fear, that obsession with control, would later become the engine behind his extreme transformations. His way out came unexpectedly. In 1982, he appeared in a fabric softener commercial, a cheerful advertisement masking the internal chaos of a child carrying the weight of 2 sinking parents. It led to more auditions, more small roles, and eventually the attention of talent agents who saw something raw and unusual in him. A boy who could disappear into any emotion asked of him. But the real turning point came in 1987, when he was cast in Steven Spielberg's Empire, the Sun overnight. The 13-year-old went from restless child actor to global phenomenon, a star who delivered one of the most haunting performances ever seen from someone his age. People celebrated his brilliance. What they didn't see was the cost. Fame descended on him like another move he wasn't prepared for. Cameras outside his home, strangers screaming his name, tabloids digging into his family's private life. The spotlight that should have felt like salvation instead became a second prison. And the pressure only got worse when the Bale household finally imploded. Christian was still a teenager when his parents' separation tore his last remaining sense of stability apart. He responded the only way he knew how, by focusing so intensely on acting that everything else, his childhood, his identity, his emotional safety, became secondary. Years later, he would admit in interviews, "I didn't really grow up. I just acted, and somewhere along the way, I think I lost track of who I was." This confession wasn't dramatic. It was simply the truth of a boy who never had the chance to be one. The instability of his early life didn't only push him toward acting. It shaped the extreme, obsessive, relentless method he would later become infamous for. Because to Christian Bale, stepping into a role was not performing. It was the only time he felt like he could control the chaos. And Hollywood would take full advantage of that. The breakout success of Empire, the Sun, should have been the beginning of a triumphant ascent. For most young actors, a Spielberg film was a golden ticket. But for Christian Bale, it was the beginning of a psychological storm he was too young to understand, let alone survive. At 13, he became a global sensation. The mesmerizing boy whose haunting eyes carried the trauma of war on screen. Critics called him a prodigy. Studios wanted him. Magazines printed his face everywhere. But Christian, still reeling from his parents' separation and the emotional instability of a nomadic childhood, wasn't prepared for the sudden invasion of his personal world. What followed wasn't admiration. It was obsession. Fans camped outside his home. Teen magazines demanded interviews. Crowds surged toward him at airports. The pressure became so overwhelming that at one event, the hysteria nearly crushed him. He later recalled feeling trapped. Like a lab animal, the darker truth was that Christian didn't have anyone to protect him from a machine he had just been thrown into. Hollywood loved his talent, not the fragile 13-year-old behind it. And his family, already fractured, couldn't shield him either. This vulnerability led him into a period of intense confusion. Instead of celebrating his success, he began to resent acting. Fame, to Bale, wasn't a reward. It was the latest version of instability, another force trying to consume him. In interviews years later, he admitted he considered quitting acting altogether. He was still a teenager. Throughout the early 1990s, Bale drifted through the industry with the quiet determination of someone trying to rebuild himself in the shadows. He took small roles, supporting roles, roles in films that barely broke even. Yet every performance carried a certain precision, a discipline that felt unnatural for someone his age, as if he was compensating for the chaos in his personal life by achieving absolute control in his work. 1994's Little Women brought him attention again, but it wasn't enough to stabilize his career or his sense of identity. Casting directors saw in him a talent they couldn't quite categorize. Intense yet reserved, brilliant yet unpredictable. Too dark for standard leading man roles, too handsome for character actor roles. Christian Bale simply didn't fit anywhere yet. But something else was happening beneath the surface. Without realizing it, Bale was crafting the foundation of what would later define him. Method acting, not as a technique, but as a survival mechanism. While other actors practiced lines, Bale trained his mind to disappear into characters. While others prepared costumes, he studied posture, breathing, weight, silence. He wasn't trying to impress directors. He was trying to silence the turbulence inside himself. Every role became a chance to escape, even briefly, from a self he didn't understand. And Hollywood began to notice a young actor who didn't just perform, he transformed. Then came the project that would change everything. In 1999, Christian Bale was cast in American Psycho, a role no one wanted. The film studios feared would destroy any actor attached to it. Violent, disturbing, psychologically unhinged. It was the kind of character that demanded both brilliance and madness. A role built for somebody who could walk the razor's edge between charm and horror. Christian Bale didn't walk that edge. He lived on it. An American Psycho would not only redefine his career, it would unlock the extreme transformations, the haunting intensity, and the unsettling devotion to craft that would propel him into his darkest chapters. American Psycho 2000 was supposed to be a career gamble, a controversial adaptation that many actors refused to touch. But the moment Christian Bale stepped into the role of Patrick Bateman, the world saw something unsettling. A performance so calculated, so eerily precise, that audiences struggled to separate the actor from the monster he portrayed. It wasn't just acting, it was transformation. Bale controlled every twitch, every blink, every curl of the lip. He trained his smile to look too perfect, his jaw tension to signal a predator beneath the polished businessman. Even the way he placed a business card on the table, slow, deliberate, almost surgical, sent chills through viewers. Hollywood took notice. A new archetype was born, the actor who could become anything at any cost. But while American Psycho became a cult classic, something darker was brewing behind the scenes. The realization that Bale had finally found a part of himself that Hollywood wanted. The man willing to destroy and rebuild his body, psyche, and identity for every role. Then, in 2004, he pushed his transformation to a level no one imagined possible. For The Machinist, Bale dropped from roughly 82 kilograms to just 54 kilograms, living on black coffee, an apple, and a single can of tuna per day. His ribs clawed through his skin. His eyes sunk into hollow shadows. Walking upstairs left him breathless. Crew members whispered that he looked closer to a ghost than a man. But Christian Bale didn't complain. He didn't ask for sympathy. He simply dissolved into Trevor Resnick, a character drowning in paranoia, guilt, and insomnia. Behind the camera, directors were stunned. In front of the camera, audiences were horrified. And Hollywood? Hollywood applauded, because it had finally found its ultimate chameleon. Only a year later, in a move that felt almost impossible, Bale was cast as Bruce Wayne in Batman Begins. Christopher Nolan wanted someone with intensity beyond the typical superhero mold. Someone who could capture both the billionaire facade and the fractured child underneath the mask. But to become Batman, Bale had regained more than 30 kilograms of muscle in just a few months. He ate endlessly, trained relentlessly, and pushed his body from skeletal fragility to superhero build at a pace doctors would describe as borderline dangerous. Yet when Nolan saw him, he said Bale had actually become too big and had to slim down again. This was no longer dedication. This was obsession. And the industry loved it. Batman Begins 2005 resurrected not only the franchise but Bale's entire public identity. Suddenly, he wasn't just an actor. He was the Batman, the definitive version for an entire generation. Audiences praised him. Studios coveted him. Directors admired his intensity. And fans worshipped his commitment. But what no one saw was a quiet collapse beneath the applause. The dramatic transformations had taken a toll on his health. His metabolism was damaged. His mood shifted dramatically between roles. Insomnia haunted him. The pressure to meet Hollywood's expectations, now higher than ever, became suffocating. And something else grew with Bale's fame, a split between his public image and his private reality. In public, he was a stoic, controlled, brilliantly disciplined artist. In private, he was a man on the verge of breaking, a man who had spent his whole life adapting, shifting, becoming what others needed him to be. But the most dangerous cracks didn't appear in his body. They appeared in the relationships around him. As Bale soared at the top of Hollywood, the unresolved wounds from his childhood, the perfectionism he clung to, and emotional instability buried beneath decades of transformation would erupt violently and drag him into the darkest chapters of his career. And the world was about to see a side of Christian Bale no camera had ever captured before. As Christian Bale rose higher, the shadows around him grew darker. Fame hadn't healed him. It had only given him more places to hide the fractures. Behind the facade of the perfect method actor, the chameleon, the genius, the unstoppable force, something volatile was building, waiting for the moment the world would finally witness it. On July 20th, 2008, in the middle of the dark night dominating the global box office, Christian Bale walked into one of the most devastating chapters of his life. At the Dorchester Hotel in London, just hours before a major premiere event, an argument erupted between Bale, his mother Jenny, and his sister Sharon. No cameras captured what happened inside that room. But within 24 hours, headlines exploded across the world. Christian Bale arrested for assault. Batman under investigation by Scotland Yard. His mother and sister accuse him of verbal and physical aggression. Scotland Yard formally opened an investigation. Bale spent hours at the police station giving testimony. The press spun it into a circus, a shocking contrast to the hero he played on screen. But those close to the family knew the truth was more complicated than any headline. Years of emotional distance, unresolved trauma from his parents' separation, financial tensions, and deep resentment had built up silently. Bale had been carrying childhood wounds for decades. The instability, the pressure, the expectation to be perfect, and this confrontation hit the rawest nerve when his mother later gave interviews to tabloids. It only made things worse. Christian felt betrayed. The family broke apart. He stopped speaking to them for years. To the world, it looked like a scandal. To Bale, it was a moment he realized fame could not protect him from people who knew him before he was Christian Bale. And the truth? He was not the hero of that story. He was simply a man who had never learned how to be a son. Only months after clearing the family case, another explosion surfaced, this time in front of the entire world. In 2009, during the filming of Terminator Salvation, an audio recording leaked online, a 4-minute meltdown. Bale unleashed a storm of fury at the film's director of photography, Shane Hurlbut, for unintentionally walking into a shot. But this wasn't ordinary anger. It was volcanic, unrestrained, seething with exhaustion and pressure. He screamed, he cursed, he threatened to quit. Millions listened in disbelief. The clip spread across the internet like wildfire, becoming one of the most infamous on-set outbursts in Hollywood history. People mocked him. Radio shows parodied him. Comedians joked about it for years. But beneath the laughter was a darker truth. Those who worked closely with Bale saw what was really happening. A man who had pushed himself too far, for too long. A body wrecked by transformation. A mind strained by insomnia, emotional isolation, and the weight of living inside characters who twisted his personality. I was out of order. I acted like a punk, Bale later admitted. But by then, the damage to his reputation was done. For the first time, the world wasn't seeing the disciplined genius. It was seeing the raw, unfiltered turbulence he'd spent decades hiding. Hollywood praised his transformations as legendary, but the truth was far more disturbing. Bale wasn't simply changing his look. He was annihilating his body every few years in ways medical experts described as catastrophic. For The Machinist, 2004, lost nearly 30 kilograms, ate barely more than 200 to 300 calories per day, risked permanent organ damage, suffered insomnia and hallucination-like symptoms. For Batman Begins, 2005, regained 30 kilograms of muscle in months, trained intensively despite metabolic shock. For Rescue Dawn, 2006, lost weight again to portray a prisoner of war. For American Hustle, 2013, gained over 18 kilograms, damaged his back, wearing a heavy prosthetic belly. For Vice, 2018, transformed once more into Dick Cheney, suffered health complications from extreme weight gain. Doctors warned that cycling through starvation, rapid bulking, and metabolic whiplash could cause permanent heart damage, hormonal collapse, and chronic mental fatigue. But Christian Bale shrugged it off. "It's my job," he said. The truth was harsher. Acting wasn't just his job. It was the only place he felt in control. Every transformation was both performance and a punishment. Behind closed doors, Bale struggled with isolation. He rarely attended Hollywood parties. He avoided premieres when he could. He hid from the spotlight unless he needed it for a film. Co-stars often described him as intense, obsessive, difficult to read. Some admired him. Some feared him. Many didn't understand the internal battle he was fighting. For The Machinist, he shut himself off from the world for months. For American Psycho, he lived inside the ego of Patrick Bateman, carrying the character's coldness with him even when cameras stopped rolling. What no one realized at the time was that Bale wasn't just acting. He was dismantling himself, piece by piece, and rebuilding a new version for every role. Hollywood celebrated the results. But privately, Christian Bale was losing touch with the edges of his own identity. At what point does dedication become self-destruction? At what point does method become madness? And how long can one man push before the body or the mind refuses to follow? For Christian Bale, that breaking point was approaching. In the wreckage of scandals, physical extremes, and emotional burnout, Christian Bale stood at crossroads. His body had been pushed through cycles of starvation and rapid transformation. His reputation had been bruised by public outbursts. His private life had been torn open and dissected by headlines. But this was a strange thing about Bale. He didn't collapse. He recalibrated. Christian Bale met Sibby Blazek in the late 1990s while she was working as Winona Ryder's personal assistant. She was calm where he was volatile, grounded where he was restless. She didn't fear his intensity. She understood it. They married in 2000 in a quiet ceremony far from Hollywood's flashing cameras. For Bale, it was the first real moment of permanence in a life defined by upheaval. Sibby didn't just become his partner. She became the anchor that steadied the internal storms he had spent decades hiding. When the 2008 family scandal erupted, she stood by him. When the Terminator Salvation meltdown went viral, she stayed loyal. She was a silent force behind the resurrection of his emotional stability. Years later, Bale credited her, guardedly, in his own restrained way, for giving him something he never had, a place to return to that didn't require transformation, Bale's first daughter was born in 2005 during the filming of Batman Begins. The timing was poetic. As the world was meeting a larger-than-life superhero, Bale was meeting the first person who made him question whether he needed to keep destroying his body for every role. Fatherhood didn't soften him, but it gave him clarity. He began refusing excessively dangerous transformations. He spent more days off set. He protected his children fiercely from the spotlight, almost aggressively shielding them from public view. Becoming a father didn't erase his darkness, but it gave him something to protect besides his craft. For a man who had grown up never knowing stability, creating it for someone else was its own form of healing. The 2010s marked a shift in Bale's approach. He still transformed. He could not, but he approached it with more awareness of the consequences. After years of physical punishment, he began choosing roles that challenged him emotionally rather than physically. Films like The Fighter, 2010, where he played Dickie Eklund, proved that intensity didn't always require bodily destruction. He won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor, validation that his brilliance wasn't defined solely by extremes. But old habits die hard. When Vice 2018 came, Bale once again underwent a drastic physical rebuild to embody Dick Cheney. The weight gain was massive, and the health risk frightening. Bale later admitted that each time he transformed like this, recovery became harder. He could feel the toll. His heart raced unpredictably. His metabolism responded sluggishly. Doctors warned him that another round of extreme gain or loss could be irreversible. For the first time in his career, Bale publicly stated that he would stop doing dangerous physical transformations. His body had reached its limit, and so had he. There comes a moment in every life where a person must choose between what they are good at and what they are becoming. For Christian Bale, that moment was quiet. Not another scandal, not another meltdown, not another punishing diet or brutal workout regimen. It was a realization that he no longer needed to vanish into characters to prove his worth. He began to accept interviews with more openness. He allowed himself to laugh on set. He chose roles based on meaning, not transformation. He allowed the world to see Christian Bale, not just the avatar of his characters. The man who once said he didn't know who he was slowly began piecing together an identity that wasn't built from the remnants of every role he played. These weren't dramatic revelations. They were small choices, private, deliberate, human. That marked the beginning of Christian Bale's reclamation of himself. Hollywood still offered him roles designed to break him. He simply stopped accepting them. In the end, the greatest transformation of Christian Bale's life wasn't losing or gaining weight. It was finally learning where he ended and where the characters began.